So why did we end up with a hung parliament? Well, you can learn a lot by taking a look at my older videos. Let's go back.
Number 10. The country will get worse before it gets better. During the campaign, the idea of yet more years of Tory rule, Brexit headache and economic uncertainty will take hold. The SNP will lose seats, but continue arguing for independence despite not getting it. The Lib Dems will lose out as the country unites for Brexit. The country will be left voiceless during the negotiations, so the opposition, whoever it may be at the time, will be able to make a comeback. The election could also mean a change in Prime Minister again or a hung parliament. If the country is unsuccessful, the country would pull a no deal and another snap election would be called. At this point, the focus of the NHS and the economy would take top priorities. Either way, running the country will become the issue.
The Conservatives will shrink again and Labour will gain that majority back. Labour smack bang in the middle. That's why it could prove either fatal or beneficiary for them. Fatal because people don't know where they stand. Beneficiary because they spread themselves out across all thought groups. A leader who was there because nobody else wanted the job. Theresa May is also really bad at being upfront, transparent and honest. Remember the whole Brexit means Brexit argument? Theresa May fails to be seen as anything other than an inevitable winner, and Jeremy Corbyn fails to be seen as anything other than a loser, as she doesn't seem to be a fan of being challenged, after refusing to take part in the TV debates. But if Theresa May keeps talking about thrashing her opponents, then the media, or her opponents, just have to mention democracy, and the whole idea of a one-party state starts to play in the public's mind. So if they can't prove how they are going to make Brexit a success, then they won't be in power, and they have a lot of catching up to do. The Lib Dems, however, going against Brexit, makes them seem like another one-issue party. They made the vote happen, we voted for it, and now the UK is independent from the EU. So what's the point in him? Nigel Farage had personality, charisma, and changed the nation, so much so Paul Nuttall will never outshine his shadow. The SNP are always banging on about independence, and so are the media and all other parties when talking about them. They know any retaining of seats is something they will push against Westminster for another referendum. So you have all the parties fighting against the establishment. The only difference being Theresa May is fighting against the EU, while the others are fighting against her. Number 4. There's a good chance the UK won't get a deal on Brexit. Don't underestimate the young. Young voters are more likely to vote against Brexit, for Scottish independence, and for Labour, but we know they are much less likely to turn out in elections. Will the online backlash and crying face emojis we saw after the Brexit vote or Scottish vote turn out for this vote? Will the anti-Brexit protesters turn out? Will everyone else who voted for Brexit turn out, or has enthusiasm for it drained? I suspect controls on immigration and the need for a democratically elected representative is still rife in the country. If between now and then any of the parties manage to sell anti-immigration and good democracy in a package that doesn't include a threat to the economy, they will win. Fear has not yet plagued the voter. If anything, they have become more enthusiastic after all of it was created by them. If she gets branded with the same kind of party and the same brush that David Cameron got branded with before he resigned, then it could make her lose the election, this election. But then you've got to think about the alternative, and for many people remember Labour as the Gordon Brown party and the Tony Blair party from this point onwards. Whatever the commercial, social or political reasoning, the facts aren't the facts, and that's why we have to be sceptical of what we hear and read in this election. In some cases, I predicted that voters will reject independence. UKIP votes will go towards the Conservatives and the Conservatives gain a seat from Labour. UKIP votes just wouldn't be enough for the Conservatives to gain a majority. There were some seats that were very strong Remainers. Wales voted Leave because the establishment. Old people voted Leave because bloody young people. Brexit means Brexit. Brexit also means I have no fucking clue, and neither do any of these guys. Voting Conservative means fox hunting. Voting Labour means that we're going to be attacked by North Korea. Take a day off. Voting Liberal Democrat means homophobia. Voting Greens means Heinz. Voting SNP means goodbye, my friend. That was really bad. And voting UKIP means, what's the point? Labour, depending on how this election will pan out, could gain a significant amount of seats and eat it into the Tory majority, even if not slightly overtake it, if austerity, cuts to public services and potential strikes play into the public's mind. So with the Brexit vote now over, there's a good chance that the vote share for UKIP will be much less in this election. Terrorism won't do anything. So you might think that with the Manchester attacks, the Westminster attack, and the London Bridge attack, that terrorism will make everyone even more anti-immigration and pro-police powers, etc. But the attacks on France before the French election and the attack on Joe Cox before Brexit didn't have the same impact. Polling shows that this election has become a binary decision between the two main parties, Labour and Conservatives, with third parties losing out in the polls. Labour optimism won't last. So with the polls narrowing and Theresa May doing so badly, you might think, if you're a Labour supporter, that they might just be on course to win. Sadly, the numbers simply don't add up. Jeremy Corbyn has not been good at converting Conservative votes into Labour votes. Instead, his gain in the polls has come from third-party votes. That being said, it still heavily relies on the younger voter turning out. So if young voters do turn out, Labour could just win a hung parliament. Chances are there will be an increase in young voters in this election. Number 4. The Prime Minister won't last a term. Firstly, whoever the Prime Minister is, they have to get a good Brexit deal. This means lowering immigration, ending European bureaucracy, and getting a good trade deal. But I think Europe is going to offer the opposite, or a trade-off of one or the other, at which point the choice will be between the opposite of the things I just mentioned, or no deal. So an effective no Brexit, or no deal. With this comes economic uncertainty, civil unrest, and ministers will lose confidence in the Prime Minister. Let's hope it's a fantastic deal. Number 3. The party leaders won't last. If the election campaign is anything to go by, it's obvious the party leaders won't last. Firstly, the losing parties will want to change their leaders. Secondly, even if the results could be interpreted as success, let's not forget Labour's feud with Jeremy Corbyn last year. Then, if Theresa May gets anything other than a larger majority, she will be seen as a loser. Even if she stays, there's a chance of more U-turns like we saw in the election campaign and the election decision itself, plus the Brexit deal conundrum I mentioned before. Well, people will be angry at a Conservative government because of the cuts to policing. With increases in terrorism, a bad Brexit deal or no deal, and our economy wavering, we might be begging for some support.
I don't really have much choice. I've got a choice between a party that's divided or another party that may well become a one-nation state and overrule the whole country, almost end democracy altogether. Third-party choices like the Liberal Democrats who are going to end the whole democratic vote on Brexit. And then I've got choices like UKIP who are going to carry on being racist and being anti-immigrant. Austerity, cuts to public services, the Brexit vote. You know, we just don't have any choice anymore. Like, I'm a young person, nobody bothers to show up for these elections in my generation. I think the country is fucked because I want to see this country change, because I don't want to see years of austerity continue, because I want to see a shake-up, because I'm not happy with the way things are, and the only way I can change things legitimately without voting for a third party is by voting for Labour. And so many changes of bad prime ministers, Brown, Blair, Cameron. I'm voting Jeremy Corbyn because I believe him to be the least terrible of the two options.
So in summary, I think Theresa May lost seats because she had a terrible campaign. She was a Prime Minister that changed mid-term, which I've shown before, often makes Prime Ministers lose out in the next election. Called a snap election, which always makes Prime Ministers lose. She changed her policy mid-campaign, which made her strong and stable rhetoric seem much less certain. Personality-wise, she's also very hidden, tense, and not very transparent, but she did gain the Brexit argument, doing better in Leave areas. Whereas Jeremy Corbyn did better in Remain areas. Jeremy Corbyn was good at getting the young vote out to vote for him, but the Labour Party's feud with him did mean that he was coming from a long way back. I think he's secured his position now though, unlike Theresa May. Third parties lost out and the result did become more binary. Voters in Scotland rejected independence and voted tactically for the Tories. I expected most of the UKIP vote to go to the Tories, but instead it went to Labour. And so Labour were able to gain seats, taking away the Tory majority, while the Tories just had a few more seats because of their gains in Scotland, making the Brexit deal and the future of the country much less certain. But anyway, I love elections and I love making these videos for you guys. Now the election is over, let me know what you want me to make for you guys. Make sure you subscribe and check out all my other videos. I do comedy and I talk about other stuff as well.